Assalamu alaikum jami'an. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to this online seminar on the commercial management of athletes, hosted by the Leaders Development Institute, which is known as LDI at the Ministry of Sport in Saudi Arabia. It is an honor to have you all join us today for what promises to be an enlightening and inspiring session. My name is Hamad Fahwan, project manager at LDI, and it's an honor to be your facilitator today for this significant seminar. As we delve into the world of commercial management of athletes, we are privileged to have Dr. Serhat Yilmaz, a senior lecturer in sport law at Loughborough University School of Sports, Exercise and Health Science, where he leads the professional certificate program for sports agents, a course he developed, where he leads the professional on the various undergraduate and postgraduate courses. We are truly excited to have such an expert in this field with us today, and we look forward to his presentation, which promised to expand our knowledge and understanding of commercial management of athletes. Thank you. Once again, we will have the Q&A session after his presentation, where you can engage directly with our speaker and you can discuss the questions that you have. Thank you once again for joining us today. Let's take this opportunity to learn, share, and inspire each other as we explore this fascinating world of commercial management of athletes. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Serhat Yilmaz.
Okay, thank you, Hamad. First of all, I think that the sound-wise we are fine, right? You can hear me, Hamad?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Okay, perfect. First of all, let me say this: it's a great privilege for me also to be in a such company and deliver my expertise, I might call this space, to such distinguished group of participants. So in that respect, I'm really honored also, and it's excellent to engage, albeit online, and also recognizing that the online space, obviously we are not in a physical space, can be challenging in terms of engagement, interactiveness, but hopefully I can do a justice and I can make this session as engaging and as interactive as possible. So the way I'm gonna basically progress with the session is in 5 steps. So first of all, I would like to briefly introduce myself and my work, and hopefully then my lens is to the commercial management of talent and agents, which I'm going to unpack in the process, who tend to work with the talent in this space in their commercial management. Will be sort of relevant to you and linked to my background. And then from there on, really, when we start diving into the core content, in order to make sense of this space or the topic I'm talking about, I think it's important that we take a step back and start to think and understand the role of modern agents in the world of sport. So that would be my starting point, and I'm gonna sort of spend some time on it as to the role, and then from then we are gonna move into this commercial management of athletes, we call it now, by agents, and I'm gonna present the research actually we have been conducting here at Loughborough University through the world of football agents to understand actually the role of an agent around commercial management of talent. Okay, so in that respect, that content is very contemporary. So we follow the robust methodology. So we talk to the agents in the research process. We run a survey with the agent industry in order to, as I said, to understand what they do in practice. And this is for me is a core insight that this research is conveying, and I would like to outline. And then obviously once we understand the role, this commercial role that is conducted by agents around talents, I think what I'm going to present, this contemporary outlook, for me, it has implications for the industry. And then that would be the sort of contemporary aspects and the future. So it will be almost like future looking, and we try to make sense of this thing, but also its implications for the industry. And in that respect, hopefully once I finish my presentation, we can move into the Q&A session, and there perhaps we can debate. I would like to also capture your perspectives about the implications of what I'm presenting, this contemporary outlook that I will present. And as Hamad said, we'll have a Q&A session, but also when we were planning with Hamad, I said I'm also happy to take questions as I go along. And I think if you've got any burning questions, as I told through the presentation, please put it into the relevant Q&A box, and we will be able to answer those. But as Ahmad said, there will be a dedicated Q&A session also at the end of my presentation. So, who I am then, briefly about myself and my work. As Ahmad said, I'm Dr. Serhat Yilmaz, a senior lecturer in sports law. So my expertise, I define myself as a sports law specialist, first of all, but also I'm a scholar, a legal scholar. I'm originally from Turkey, by the way. So I did my bachelor law degree in Turkey. Then I moved to the UK and I did my master's, I did my PhD. And when in this process, I start specializing on sports law, and particularly my aspect of my core expertise is also the regulatory frameworks of sport, particularly football. And within that space, I particularly focus on agents and the regulation of agents, but also the practice of agents and the way it's impacting on the sport industry, but also how that the practice is evolving. And in my research also I ask this question around how then also they can be more effectively regulated. So it's a legal oriented lenses, but in that process, in my research also, therefore I look at the practice, I try to understand how the role of agent evolving, what they do, what requires regulation, and obviously in terms of world of sport, particularly football, as you may know, agents are now one of the core actors of the football ecosystem. They became extremely powerful, and therefore that power dynamics of agents within the industry also creates challenges for the governing bodies as well as public authorities, because agents, there are good agent practices, but there are also what I define as agent malpractices exist within the industry. So this is sort of in a broader context my work and my focus on this space and my lenses. But also, to building on my expertise, early in the day, I recognized that also we need to professionalize the industry around agents, sport industry. So I recognize that basically agents needs to be professionalized because the industry is evolving, but also I recognize that, for instance, in the world of football, I think club needs to understand the role of agents better. Players needs to understand the role of agents better, as well as, in my view, particularly with the young talent, also now I advocate that parents also needs to understand the role of agents better. Hence, you know, my research and my work in this space. But alongside that, as Hamad said, in order to educate the industry, actually at Loughborough, we launched one of the world's first executive education on agents, and that's called Professional Certificate Program for Sports Agents. And we have been running this program since 2018, October 2018. It's an extremely successful program, and it's about being an agent. This is what we educate our delegates on, every aspect of being an agent. Last year, we signed a collaboration agreement with Johan Cruyff Institute, this European institute focusing on executive education in sport. And now we deliver this program in collaboration with Johan Cruyff Institute. Then, you may know, those from the world of football, recently FIFA re-regulated football agents in the football industry and introduced an exam, licensing exam, for any individual to pass. So they need to succeed this exam as a precondition for the football agent license. I also designed a training course on the FIFA agent exam, and we have been running that course since May 2023, helping basically individuals with their exam and their success in the exam. Alongside that, in order to do all these educations, I also got a higher education innovation funding in the UK, and I developed a bespoke platform, education and community platform, what I call Sports Agents Hub. So we do all of our agent-related education and training through the Agent Hub, and there we also try to build this community of learners, enabling our delegates to interact with each other and learn from each other. Alongside that, I also work with FIFA. I was consulted during the regulatory reforms around agent agent regulations, but also I led the project, which was the Loughborough project, where we designed the FIFA CPD, now, which is under the FIFA football agent regulations, is a compulsory education for every licensed football agent to represent minors in the world of football. So that's basically, minor means those under the age of 18. We completed that project here at Loughborough University, and currently that educational CPDs is hosted by FIFA Agent Platform. And as I said, since October 2023, last year, every licensed agents, if they want to work with a minor, they need to complete our education. So I've been doing, basically, the point I'm trying to convey through my background, I've been doing quite a lot on the topic of agents, but also professionalization of the agent industry, as well as, meanwhile, working with particularly FIFA as a world governing body around regulations and direction of regulations as to also to enhance the professionalism of the agent industry. Now then, how did I come to the commercial side? And this is what I'm going to talk about, because what I see now in terms of the agent practice, the role, we are seeing actually commercial side is becoming a contemporary but contemporary but predominant practice. And I'm going to unpack this for you. But first of all, let's try to think about the role of agents in sport. So how do we make sense of what agents do? Okay, I call this the conceptualization. Although it's an abstract, obviously what I'm going to present comes from the practice. This is what we observe in the practice, and it's within the existing literature. So in order to make sense of it, let me use Cristiano Ronaldo example. Obviously, what we have here is a world-leading talent, right? A top talent in the world of football. And if we think about an athlete, okay, and if we think about the way agents work, sports to athlete, fundamentally, we need to think about the needs of the athlete, isn't it? Because agency is there to act on behalf of the athlete in order to support them with certain aspects of their athletic life, right? So in this case, we have got Cristiano Ronaldo here, and Cristiano Ronaldo plays football, right? And plays football on the field, right? So there is this footballing activity, and when we think about footballing activity, obviously there's a club that he plays for, right? And within that context, therefore, there's a contract with that club, which imposes certain obligations on Ronaldo, certain obligations on the club. But fundamentally, through that contract, Ronaldo is able to play what is defined as club football and take part in competitions. Now, obviously, agents historically, the core role of agents was actually this managing or representing the player for this on-field activity. Okay? And therefore, conceptually, we call this on-the-field representation of the talent. So, any activity of agent concerning the players playing or what he or she does on the field, that defines as the on-the-field representation. And fundamentally, as you may know, the key aspect of this role is actually in terms of, by the way, in team sports, and in this case in football, for instance, where agents go and source playing opportunities or employment opportunities, we can call it, with the clubs, and eventually obviously negotiate those contracts, the employment contracts, and in return obviously there is that representation relationship between the talent and the agent, and then agents receive certain level of fees from that service that they provide to the talent. So this is in essence our predominant but more historical understanding of the agent role and what they have been doing, they used to do. And it's still, by the way, it's still one of the core role of agents. Don't get me wrong, it's still there. But when we start thinking about modern world of athletes, modern world of agency, we also start seeing things off the field. Okay, so the athlete is no longer confined on the field, but they do a lot outside the field. So for instance, again, Cristiano Ronaldo does all sorts of things outside the field or beyond just playing football. You might have seen this, but first of all, he's obviously a big athlete brand, isn't it? So he has got this brand called CR7. And I was just like in preparing the presentation, I was literally looking at online, and he has got all sort of ventures. Okay, so he has got some of the clothing range, he has got his perfume, he has got his brand of hotels, he partners with the nutrition companies, so on and so forth. And all this is off the field. And someone like Cristiano Ronaldo requires a lot of sport, right? Because he needs to focus on the field activity, playing football, because that's the success on the field drives the off-field activity, and therefore then someone like Cristiano Ronaldo needs that sport network, and usually it's the agent who provides that sport network, in order to manage this off-the-field activities. And conceptually, we call this off-the-field representation. So therefore, as our starting point, we need to understand that the role now has two dimensions. So it has this duality. Core and historical role is still there on the field representation. So going out and finding, playing, sporting opportunities. But now, what is the contemporary dimension of the role is this off-the-field representation. Obviously, we are focusing here the commercialization aspect, but alongside that, this off-the-field representation includes providing legal advice, it includes financial management of talent, for instance, it includes PR, it includes lifestyle management, right? So we are obviously looking at the commercial representation. Okay, so this is important as a starting point, a fundamental underlining concept of role of agents. Now, therefore, we need to see this commercial representation as a component of the field representation. And let me then show you some examples. Obviously, as I said, because like I use that terminology, conceptualization, but as I said, we see this in the industry, in practice. I don't know, you may know, but here we go. We've got this, one of the biggest global sport agency, Wasserman, US-based, but now global, basically. They've got European offices, and they are operating in a number of different sports. And I was looking at sort of like just to understand what they do in terms of sporting world and with the talent. And look at this. If we look at sort of that dichotomy or duality of the role, actually, majority of what Wasserman do is around off-the-field representation of the talent than actually on-the-field representation. Talent sales and marketing, content development, brand creation, broadcast media division, client concierge services. In this part, in this first row, there is nothing about actually on-the-field representation until we get to the second bit, which is basically starts with contract negotiations. But again, it doesn't specify what kind of contracts. IP licensing, performance analytics, public relations, social media management. So all this, actually, it's more, as I said, on the off-the-field representation than on the field representation. Let me give you another example. We have got CAA, again, one of the biggest agencies in the world, operating in number of sports. But here we go. That's basically, I was looking for sort of their services, and they talk about that language that I just present you. Through our CAA base division, and CAA base is the football division of CAA, we represent many of the world leading soccer players, manager, coaches, and we have a track record of completing transfers with the world's biggest clubs. Our deep expertise, honesty, integrity, and strong relationships, combined with CAA global resources, enable us to provide best-in-class service to our clients, both on and off field through their careers. So again, basically what CAA is emphasizing is they do both, right? But I just want to illustrate that. Therefore, now, building on this conceptualization, right now, we are focusing this concept of commercial representation as a component of the off-the-field representation. Okay? Now, you might be thinking then, well, why you are telling this to us? You gave us an example of Cristiano Ronaldo. You gave us an example of two big global sport agencies. But we know that, obviously, if you are dealing with a top talent, then there's a huge market potential of that talent commercially, right? And we know that. If we look at the top talent, and here I'm talking about the commercial dimension of this work by agents. And here we go. This is from Forbes, 22 and from 2023 to 2024, May. And this is basically estimation by Forbes of the highest paid athletes in the world. So this is top talent. And why I think this visual is good, it also makes this distinction between on-the-field income and off-the-field income. Again, therefore, it gives us some sense of understanding of the value of the commercial space that I just explained. And look at this, the top, obviously top of the list is Cristiano Ronaldo, right? Okay, Cristiano Ronaldo has obviously significant level of salary, but at the same time, he generates, according to Forbes, around $60 million from the off-the-field activities, commercial activities. Lionel Messi is really interesting one because almost his income is divided between on-the-field activity, that's playing for his club, but then also off the field is commercial activities. What is striking though, and it's really interesting though, someone like LeBron James, actually he makes more off the field than on the field. It's quite striking. So if it's done, what this illustrates, if it's done right, this commercial representation, then obviously it can bring significant added value to the talent. But as I said, we are talking about top talent here. But then things start changing. And where it is changing, it's changing in US. Okay, and we need to recognize this dynamic. You may know this, but what's happening in US? In amateur sports, okay, so this college level sports in US, which is quite big as a sporting activity and sport product. But historically, the organizers of those amateur leagues, they were restricting talent, college athletes, to commercialize themselves. Because what they were doing, they were restricting them to use their name, image, likeness. There is this concept of NIL. This concerns, so that's an acronym, but it's name, image, likeness. The organizers were retaining those rights of NIL rights of the athletes, and they were the one who monetizing those rights. But recently, that has changed. So right now in US, there is this movement, NIL movement, where these organizers are actually giving NIL rights of the athletes back. And athletes, and this is amateur athletes I'm talking about. I'm not talking about here top talent. Amateur athletes in college sports now start engaging on commercial activities. And it's so striking, although it's a contemporary development, but look at this. I got this from Open Dorsey, this slide, one of the marketplaces, okay, where basically, when I say it's a marketplace, it's a platform where these college athletes are connecting with third parties, entities, sponsors, endorsers in order to engage and enter into commercial contracts. Look at this. It's striking. According to Open Dorsey, the value of that NIL market in US projected to be $2.5 billion by 2025-2026. It's already almost, it's a 1 billion. They've got this data. So from these NIL rights, these amateur college athletes are generating significant commercial revenues. So this is a really interesting development. And as I said, what it's telling us, actually, a commercial potential of talent is no longer confined to top talent. Because there is this general conception of the talent, of the industry. When I talk to the industry, they always say, well, unless it's a top talent, there's no commercial potential. But the US market is completely defying that notion now. And we need to recognize that. It's a really interesting space and development. And what I project, what is probably likely to do, in my view, eventually what's happening in US will have a spillover into European sports or other parts of the world. Because it's a significant development. It's about basically commercialization of talent, but no longer confined to top level, because, as I said, what US is showing, if it's done right, even amateur athletes can achieve significant sums. So we need to, it's a contemporary dynamic, and we need to recognize that. So this is the market we are looking. So what I try to do is I talk about the sort of the role of the agent, how they are supporting athletes with their commercialization through representation. Now we've got this evolving market space. Obviously, this was historically confined to the top talent, but now in the US, we have got this grassroots movement, and the market potential is significant. And these were the sort of dynamics I was monitoring over the years, and which then led me to the research and start thinking about, okay, if we are talking about this commercial representation of talent, what does it look like? How it is done? Because when I look at the football industry, and I've been engaging with the football industry, the agents, governing bodies, other participants of the ecosystem, although like everybody claims to do commercial representation, when I challenge them and ask questions about how it is done, I didn't get convincing responses around their understanding of the commercial representation or this changing landscape. That's why we start asking this question: what is commercial representation? How it is done? And that's the research we undertake. And this is what we find, and this is what we conceptualize. So in the research process, we talk to number of agents, first of all, and those doing this, successfully doing this. And we try to understand what they are doing. And then we also run a survey, and eventually we analyze our findings and we try to develop a model, a conceptual model of commercial representation of talent. Now, when they explain us, although I'm sort of presenting this horizontal and linear way, so from one dimension to another, it's actually a circular process. So each dimension, so we built this three-dimensional conceptualization of the commercial representation. And each dimension obviously affects and interacts with each other. But here, as I said, I'm presenting in a sort of linear, horizontal way. The first thing those doing this successfully saying is obviously you need an athlete brand. And that needs to be starting point. So you need to develop this athlete brand. So if you want to commercialize talent, first you need to develop a brand. And there is steps within this dimension that an agent or those engaging in the commercial space needs to undertake. So this involves, first of all, creating athlete brand identity, identifying athlete brand potential, and then developing athlete brand strategy, and then promoting that brand. So that's a fundamental starting point. So if you don't have athlete brand, therefore, first of all, you cannot, without athlete brand, involving commercial representation. This is the one thing we are trying to define, because when we talk to, for instance, agents in practice, they talk about, like when we talk about commercial representation, they talk about social media management. And we ask, what do you do in social media space? Oh, we send certain posts through the athlete's social media channels. That's what they define as commercial representation. So then they can start attracting endorsements and commercial opportunities. But then when we start asking them, do you have an athlete brand? Do you have a brand-related brand strategy? That's when they get puzzled. That's why when we know they don't understand. So this first dimension is fundamental in the cycle. You got to start with that. Develop an athlete brand. Then those who are doing it, telling us, the next step is you need to utilize the athlete brand. So first develop the athlete brand, then you need to utilize it in order to source commercial revenues. So you need to start with, obviously, representation. So now agents start representing that brand and then going out and sourcing endorsement opportunities, negotiating those contracts, and then also once there's an endorsement deal, obviously they are managing that commercial contracts as well, and that commercial relationship between the talent and the commercial entity. So there is that utilization phase. Develop, utilize. In the process, the third dimension is where agents were really emphasizing relationships. Now, it's a complex space, but there are a number of different relationships also commercial agents needs to harness in order to make commercial representation or management successful. First of all, you start with agent-athlete relationship, right? What this requires, success of this model requires, first of all, you need to build the brand. And in order to build the brand, you need to understand the talent, because you will build the brand on the, attributes of the talent, those specific attributes. So therefore, that requires understanding between the agent and the athlete. You can't just build brand because agent thinks what the athlete brand should look like Cristiano Ronaldo CR7 brand is about Ronaldo. It's not about the agent, right? So athlete needs to be at the center of it, but agents need to understand the athlete and guide it in order to build the brand. So that relationship is important. Obviously, what is the implications for practical implications of such relationship? So, when we talk to the agent industry, therefore, when you first sign a client, maybe the first thing to do is try to understand, try to learn about the client before diving into brand development. Build that relationship. Go behind the individual. Understand specific characteristics of the individual. Understand the background. Understand the unique aspects, right? So there is that relationship element there between agent and athlete. The other one is obviously the relationship with the commercial industry, because after all, like on the field representation, where in team sports agents go and talk to clubs, try to source the employment opportunity or playing opportunity. In this case, obviously, they need to source the commercial opportunity. To do that, therefore, they need to have a network. They need to have relationship with those commercial entities, endorsers, sponsors. What we identify in the process also, what we define as collaborative partnerships. It's an interesting one. And basically, this is where agents were describing, they also, for instance, work with entities who can bring added value to the brand, athlete brand. So they are not your commercial sponsors, endorsers, but they are your collaborators. So there is that collaborative relationship in order to enhance, promote the athlete brand. And then the other one was where we debated a lot, obviously, with top talent, that relationship with the fan base. Because when we look at the way top talent, utilize their brand and commercialize it, they reach out to the fan base, isn't it? So therefore, then how do you build that relationship? Obviously, funds, they already know the talent, but then how do you make sure that relationship enhanced, sustained in the process so that they keep coming back and obviously buying services, goods, or whatever commercial outputs that are coming from the talent. They sort of drive the commercialization space. So that's how we conceptualize. So three-dimensional, first starting with the athlete brand development, which is fundamental. Then it needs to be utilized. And then finally, you need to build relationships in order to advance. So what I just present, this contemporary understanding that we are developing through research, then it makes me to pose this question. What I just talked about, this model, is this only representation of the talent? Or is it something beyond that? Because the term representation, and we dive deep into it, and if you look at its literal meaning, it's about acting on behalf of someone through a capacity and usually through their authority. Okay, so that's what representation is about. But when I look at this model and our findings, representation is actually confined into the utilization dimension, the second dimension. In the developmental phase of the dimension, which is athlete brand development, that's obviously agent or the commercial agent, some of them call themselves, need to have the relationship with the athlete. So athletes obviously need to work with them. But in terms of the activity, there is no representation there. There is a building, a development element there. And same thing with the relationships, right? So therefore, for me, we need to ask this question. So is this commercial representation, or can we call this thing commercial representation, or is it going beyond that? And in our view, actually, we call this hence commercial management of athletes. So for me, this is beyond representation. This is about managing. And management means from the development to utilization and enhancement, advancement stages through relationship building. It's not just now representation, but as I said, it's more around working with talent deeper and managing them commercially. That's why now in the research we talk about actually commercial management, but evolving from representation and also capsulating representation in the process. So representation is embedded within, but this is more about management. And hence the title of my presentation, but also the contemporary aspect, because this is our latest research, and this is how we are conceptualizing this space and understanding what is being done in this commercial space with the talent. So this is important. So there is this shift from representation to management, much broader than just talent representation. So then let's start thinking about, which will pave the way to commercialization, but contemporary aspect of what we discussed, but also future of this space. Because what I just present, I think at least, has got implications. Firstly, what we are seeing, in my view, we are seeing increasing athlete empowerment. If you consider wider sport management governance literature, the literature talk about this athlete empowerment, and that empowerment linked to the changing status of the athletes. Because now there is a demand for good talent, then they can dictate their terms and conditions of engagement with sport. This is about empowerment. Their position is empowered within the sport ecosystem, right? But I think now with this commercial dimension, those empowerment further advance. It will increase. So if we think about it, I think we are seeing some of these things. Obviously, with nil movement and nil rights in the US, it's extremely unique and different, and it shows how now, you know, amateur athletes are being empowered through those rights and utilizing those rights. We know, for instance, top talent, yes, someone like Messi, we know that, for instance, when he negotiated his Inter Miami contract, we know that actually he was given some of the ownership of the club as well, right? This made the headlines. It's no longer just salary, but also owing piece of equity. So it's a very interesting concept, and it's already happening. But as I said, so we will likely to see this type of, you know, aspects that will further drive, further empower athletes' talent in their relationship between other sporting actors. And obviously, in this context, we are looking at the club, right? So that's an important implication for me, first of all, at micro level, affecting the athlete and the power dynamics between the clubs and the athletes, or event organizers and the athletes. The second one, I'm not sure if everybody wants this in the industry, because as I said, agents, there are good agent practices, but more so bad agent practices. But in my view, this development likely to further strengthen the agent power in the market as well. Again, in a wider literature, agents, now there's general acknowledgement that agents became a major actor in the sport ecosystem, because they manage the talent, they've got decision-making powers, and therefore they can dictate terms of engagement with the talent. That makes them extremely powerful. And now also, particularly those super agents or agencies, obviously they are extremely powerful. Now, therefore, for me, if agents get this commercial management that I just explained right, they will enhance the talent, empower the talent, but at the same time, they will empower themselves in the ecosystem. That's how I see it. Like when we think about, for instance, European football agency market, what is happening, you've got all these US-based agencies coming and buying European agencies. But if we look at Wasserman, CAA, I just gave you as an example, those are historically commercial agencies. They were operating in the entertainment industry. They moved to sport later, but their core has always been commercial representation, not the on-the-field representation. In order to therefore tap into a talent in Europe, they come They buy agencies, and then therefore they are now able to offer both on-field as well as off-the-field representation. But their core has been the commercial representation. Now, as this commercial aspect is evolving and growing, for me, therefore, we're likely to see more this type of mergers, acquisitions from those big agencies of the small agencies in the process, because obviously they've got that expertise, those big agencies, commercial expertise, which they can apply in different sports by buying agencies that operate in those different sports. And then we need to, I think, maybe think about here. I'm just thinking now as well, perhaps how potentially also we might see a agent industry that quite monopolistic, so controlled by big agencies. There is that tendencies of the agent market in the world of sport. Big agencies doing much more work than smaller agencies. Or as you can see, perhaps, that if you are an independent agent, it might be extremely difficult to compete with these big agencies on the commercial side, because they've got the know-how, they've got the manpower. So it's an interesting dynamic to think about in terms of the agent industry itself. Another important aspect to think about now, as I gave in that Messi example, is actually how these dynamics are gonna then impact on the athlete club team relationship. And I put contractual because contracts, employment contracts, creates that legal relationship, isn't it? But once you've got such a powerful athletes, or once you've got athletes that are commercially strong, how it's gonna then impact on, again, the relationship in a sense that those athletes might dictate their terms. We see that with top talent, isn't it? That's happening. But if the the ordinary talent is empowered, I'm wondering how that will impact on athlete club team relationship. I think it's something to again keep an eye on. So what we are seeing in the world of football, for instance, more and more big clubs now, they are trying to cover the commercial activities of the talent, and almost, in my view, moving into the representation space in the employment contracts. So basically what they are doing in practice, they are offering additional salaries in order to have the commercial rights of the players, for instance, in the world of football. Then obviously they've got the whole commercial team going out trying to exploit those commercial rights that they are getting from the talent. That's happening. That's out there. So basically what clubs essentially trying to do, bring that commercial potential in-house. And this has implications for the club management as well as the contracts. And then there's whole governance implications. First of all, regulatory implications. So how do you regulate this? So agents, as I said, big agencies are already doing this. But if we look at, for instance, in the world of football, FIFA regulations, FIFA tries to regulate or defines agent activity around activities concerning the deal. It calls it transaction. Anything outside that, FIFA defines as other services. And it doesn't regulate. There's only one provision about under the current FIFA regulations touches on that other services provided by licensed football agents, but that's all. So there is the one thing to think is whether obviously FIFA wants to regulate it. So they want to have that supervisory role as to also commercial management of talent by agents, or do they leave it just to the market forces? But then if we just expand on the FIFA regulations, FIFA also trying to control now how much obviously money agents make. You might have been following it, but FIFA introduced this commission or service fee cap for football agents in the world of football. Although those provisions are currently suspended by FIFA due to the ongoing legal challenges, because the industry took action against them due to the potential anti-competitive nature of those provisions. If FIFA wants to control the money within the football ecosystem, maybe this might be something that they need to think about. Right? So there are regulatory implications there. At the moment, it's an unregulated space. Commercial management space is currently unregulated. So it's a quite fundamental aspect, I think. If someone like FIFA, world governing body for football, decides to regulate, but then it has got institutional implications for institutional capabilities, monitoring, supervision, the whole regulatory aspects underpinning so on and so forth. So it's a big decision. So do you leave it unregulated, or do you go harder and try to regulate fully? That would be something to think about from governing body perspective. Finally, that also this might have policy implications for government and public authorities. And the reason I put it there, because I've been reflecting on this recently, because it is about athlete empowerment, right? And I think when I look at commercial space, like if we use that Cristiano Ronaldo experience or the case, what the commercial side enables Ronaldo, again, it's an extreme example, but it prepares Ronaldo for afterlife, isn't it? After sport, life after sport. And we know that, for instance, one of the core challenges of the sport industry right now, from the public authority perspective, is the dual career, challenges of dual career for athletes, where sport takes over. And then once it ends, it's a big struggle for the talent. And we know that dropout rates from sport is high. Therefore, it's important that the talent is ready for afterlife. But at the same time, this concept of athlete entrepreneurship, so again, linked to that dual career and post-transition, I think the commercial side can play a role there. And that's for me the policy implication. Like for instance, at European Union sport policy, dual career entrepreneurship is huge at the moment, because they want to tackle those challenges faced by athletes. Right? So is this something maybe to promote through the policy, this commercial side? Then once you start thinking that way, then do we need to educate athletes? When do we educate them? On what do we educate them? So on and so forth. And that's for me the policy implications. Oh, I actually did quite well. I didn't know. Time flies, but this is 5 past already. Apologies, I'm 5 minutes over the time. But I hope this was useful. And now, if it's okay, I can take the questions. I hope you have got questions, and yeah, we can move into the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suhad, for the information and the presentation. Now we'll move to the Q&A session. We have a couple questions already have been asked during your presentation. We'll start with Ibrahim Hakim question. He's asking, well, first he would like to express his gratitude for the insightful lecture. And if you can, excuse me, to look up to read the questions. You know, your presentations sparked my curiosity about intersection of architecture and sport branding in particular. I'm intrigued by how architecture can play a pivotal role in enhancing athletes' brands through the design of sports facilities. So how can these designs create unique experiences for fans while also promoting sustainability?
Okay, wow, this is an incredible question, but I would say that, like, I think it's outside the limits of this topic. This is more aligned towards the sustainability and infrastructure, and I think I've got colleagues who are gonna cover that. It's not my area of expertise, so therefore I don't wanna say anything wrong. But then again, if we think about, like, I mean, can we have a sustainability lenses on this thing that I just explained, the commercial management of talent? For me, it's about empowerment of talent, and as I said, they are them having a more fulfilled sport career, but as well as being ready for the afterlife, after sports. So for me, though, those are the sort of fundamental aspects that this space can enable, which then impacts on the public image of sport, welfare, so on and so forth, so which then can affect its sustainability. But this is more around the social, perhaps, sustainability of sport rather than environmental sustainability. I think that's where the question is going, or focusing.
Thank you, Dr. Shahad. We have Faisal Milad also asked, can you consider scheduling an important factor of commercial?
Could you repeat that, Hamad?
Can you consider scheduling an important factor of commercial? I'm not sure if the question is complete. Faisal,
yeah, I'm wondering whether that the question is like that scheduling is linked to one of the dimensions of the model that I presented. Yeah, I think we just need a bit more on that as to, like,
right,
the line of thinking to make sense of it. Yeah,
I agree. So Nuhal Khalaf also asked, how will the NIL right movements impact the commercial market potential of clubs and leagues? Could it drive athletes' migration to markets with more developed regulatory frameworks for athletes, commercialization, where sponsorship regulations and athletes' rights differ, risking driving market value and traffic external?
No, this is excellent question. Obviously, for us, like, sort of, who are, in Europe or not in US, because in US now we've got such data coming now. Like, for instance, when I look at the marketplaces, they talk about best states for the athletes around nil rights, because in the US, what's happening, each state is trying to regulate nil rights, and therefore there is no such a consistent approach always. So because each state is responsible the way regulated and legislated, therefore, hence that data and insight is emerging as to like which states are more favorable to the athletes in terms of their nil rights. That's one thing to think about. And then the other one is obviously which states has got more commercial potential. So these are the things. But therefore, based on understanding of US, I think, yeah, the question is good. Eventually, do we see some of the emerging markets, for instance, where there's so much commercial opportunity, or those rights or the management, commercial management, or more robust and better regulated? I think it's an interesting question, but we just need to wait and see. And that could be one of the implications, exactly, sector-wide implications of this contemporary development.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suhad. Hala, you can put your questions in the chat location, and I'll jump to your questions shortly. I have another question from Ibrahim Al-Dajani. He's asking, what are the key regulatory implications that governing bodies need to consider when professionalizing agents in sport, and how can these implications impact the power dynamics between agents and governing bodies?
Really good question. That's obviously a contemporary one, isn't it? So I use obviously the example from world of football, because FIFA just introduced last year this new regulations, and we know that it's problematic. So once you now, like when I say problematic in a sense that it causes tension between agent industry and the regulator, FIFA, as a world governing body for football. And that usually that comes from the nature of the regulations. And in this case, obviously, FIFA is trying to restrict how much agents can earn, restrict what they can do in a representation relationship. So I suppose one thing to think about from the FIFA experience, I mean the regulatory experience, and we need to also wait until the outcome of the legal challenges, because there is still a pending case against FIFA regulations, an important one at European level, which needs to be, we need to see what the outcome would be about the anti-competitive nature of these regulations. But what I see here is, in terms of regulatory reforms and processes, first of all, I think governing body needs to decide on what kind of regulatory approach they want to take. Do they want to have a soft regulatory approach and letting market to decide and navigate the industry, the space, or do they want a hard regulation where they try to control everything? Now, FIFA regulations, we must say, has got a number of good elements, components, but at the same time, FIFA is really hard on the earnings of agents. And you see, then the ordinary law comes into picture and becomes a tool, challenge those measures. So therefore, for me, building on FIFA experience so far, I think governing bodies needs to be extremely careful about, as I said, how hard they want to be with the regulations, because then you will have the league ordinary law challenge, and it's a problem, and FIFA is going through it now, and it creates this uncertainty for the sector, which is not good for anyone. So that really, I would say that it should be the core consideration for governing bodies. The other one is, and obviously, again, we see this in the world of football, but really for governing bodies, they really need to understand the practice. For me, that's fundamental, because if you want to design better regulations, then they need to know what goes on in practice and what is wrong, so that you can have a regulatory design that targeting those wrong things while obviously enhancing the good things. So better regulatory design needs to be guided by the understanding of the practice as well. Those are the two things I want to say.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Also, we have another question from Sayed. He's asking, how can we communicate the results of your academic research on agents with youth football players exploited by scrupulous agents in the African continent? And how do we ensure that this research reaches those who need it the most in their own language communication?
Yeah, no, excellent question. I mean, we try to make our research as outreach as possible, but I recognize that, access is still challenge and dissemination, isn't it? And perhaps partnership like this, right, where we can be front of an audience and we can disseminate our research. I think that's quite fundamental. So our partnerships and local partnerships, I think, for our global engagement is fundamental. The other thing is raising awareness. So I as I said, I closely work with FIFA, and fundamental thing now is, as I said, for me, like we are educating agents, but now we want to educate the parents, players, and clubs, and this is quite fundamental. Like not just focusing on one actor, but also focusing on other actors of the ecosystem. So this is what I'm working on, what I'm advocating, and then we need to work with all of the stakeholders in the process. But yeah, we have things to do, I must say.
Excellent. Thank you very much again, Dr. Sarhad. Also, we have Hanover Jani. She's asking, during your lecture, you mentioned that sports management extends beyond representing athletes to manage their talent. How do you view the role of talent management as a form of investment, not just in the athlete's current career, but in building their long-term brand and post-retirement opportunities? What strategies do you consider essential for maximizing an athlete's potential as an asset over time?
Oh, really good. This is a good question as well. And I think this is where this space is fundamental. So this commercial management, because what we know that athletes' careers are short, like compared to the lifespan of an athlete, like compared to the life duration of a human. If you look at top talent, they will be a top talent maybe 5 to 8 years max, right? So therefore, what is important, so we know that therefore this earnings from the on-field activity will be always limited. But then how do we harness the commercial potential? And for me, this is the value of this space, the whole commercial management of talent. That's one thing. But then also, how do we also educate them about this? Again, it comes to also the talent-facing activity, because talents also themselves need to understand their potential, themselves needs to work towards that. So the whole idea of, athlete entrepreneurship is quite fundamental. That's why I'm saying, when we start thinking from this perspective, then we can start thinking about all sorts of implications. Does this then needs to be within the policy of the government or public authority to drive this space forward and support this space forward? Does it need to be, what kind of regulatory frameworks can support it from governing body perspective, so on and so forth? But first we need to make those fundamental decisions, then devise strategies and outputs to drive it forward. I think that's how it should be. But I see it as an extremely important place for, as I said, particularly afterlife of the talent.
Excellent. Also, we have Faisal is asking, if I am interested in player agency, what courses and classes should I take to move forward?
Good one. Well, hopefully, like, I try to conceptualize the role, but then obviously we didn't dive into the specific aspects of it. But for me, like, learning is important, and this is about understanding the role, understanding the industry. That's quite fundamental, and there is quite a lot of open source materials out there. Like, this is not about going into a structured learning, but one can literally educate themselves about the industry, about the role. And then I think perhaps, like, I get this question as well, like, what would be the key skill or knowledge to have? Because there's obviously huge legal dimension of this work, because agents end up dealing with contracts most of the time. So for me, the contractual side, understanding contracts as a legal concept, but also negotiation as a skill, that's also very important, I would say. And then, yeah, doing some bespoke targeted education. Like, as I said, when we started the professional certificate program for sports agents, we were the only higher education institution doing it, and it's endorsed also by the agent industry, by the way. So therefore, perhaps, finding this type of more bespoke education to understand the insight can be helpful as well. I hope this is useful.
Thank you very much. Also, we have Ziad asking, as you know, players are human and human make mistakes. How can you as an agent manage the risk of players' mistakes on and off the field?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, and this is what we educate our delegates on our educational programs, is about sporting the talent, isn't it? And that's, for me, like, yes, they can make a mistake, and then where does the sport comes? Sport is about empowerment, first of all. So empowering them not to make mistake, one thing, but then once there is a mistake, how do you actually rectify it and support that mistake? For me, those are the sort of two core areas to focus. And again, like, mistakes, we need to define, what kind of mistakes are we talking about here? But this is, for me, how I again frame the role of agent. So we present the conceptual side, but it's about supporting the talent, and talent needs to be center of the activity. That is, to me, fundamental.
Excellent. We also have Hala asking, as an agent, what are the factors to categorize an athlete as an amateur? Is that based on her in pitch skills, or do you consider his effect on social media as well?
Yeah, no, interesting question. So just a couple of things there. The first one, and it's a fundamental one, is actually a regulatory concept, that dichotomy between amateur athlete and professional athlete, okay? So for instance, in the world of football, FIFA regulations prescribes what is a professional, or what professional is. So we've got a specific definition, and anyone that doesn't fit into that definition, FIFA defines as an amateur. That's one thing to think about, therefore. So from the regulatory frameworks, we find those definitions. And then perhaps with respect to this space, I mean, the way I sort of make that distinction between top talent and in the sport world, someone like Cristiano Ronaldo, LeBron James, Lionel Messi, they've got a professional status, right? Because they've got a contract with clubs, and that contract defines them as professionals. But then you've got those amateurs where they don't have that, professional status. So I suppose, yeah, I'm just double thinking now, but for me, it's a regulatory matter rather than athlete attributes, I would call it. So it's not about being the best to be defined as a professional, but it's more about professional status under the regulations. That's how I would define it.
Thanks. We also have Tariq question. What courses, classes, and information do you recommend I take in order to have a better understanding about this topic?
Again, that's come back to our, the answer before. Learn as much as you can. I think sports law is quite important because of the legal underlying dynamics of the role and the practice. I would say that negotiation, I already said. Perhaps anything around the sport management probably captures that, but anything about the sport ecosystem, making sense of actors, its evolution, I would say. And again, targeted, like bespoke education.
We also have another question from Mohammed. What emerging risks do you see in the football industry regarding the commercial exploitation of young players, and what ethical frameworks should clubs adopt to protect both their commercial interests and the well-being of developing talent?
Okay, big topic, and because this is my other sort of aspect of my work, because I also focus on safeguarding of young talent in sport and particularly in football. And I think this is an excellent question. So what is the risk for sport in terms of lack of safeguarding for young talent? The biggest risk, in my view, is basically sustainability of sport. Because what drives the sport from the talent perspective, what drives the sport forward is the grassroots talent, right? So every talent starts somewhere before they become top talent. And in that process, the talent development process, safeguarding is fundamental. We gotta make sure we are protecting talent, their welfare, well-being, mental health, physical health, right? And this is basically, for me, ecosystem needs to do that. It needs to come from the system. So we need safeguarding systems in place. It doesn't, when I say it needs to come from the system, it means it doesn't need to be demanded by the talent. It should be given, it should be recognized and given. Now, once we look at from this perspective now, you could see that once we are faced with number of safeguarding issues, from abuse to exploitation, trafficking, those are fundamental safeguarding issues. So that's, first of all, creates problem for talent sustainability. Then, for me, what we know also world of sport, right? Particularly at the grassroots and youth levels, young talent always becomes a top talent eventually. We know that some of them will drop out. A majority will drop out. So we need to recognize that. So therefore, again, we need to make sure we are developing human through the youth systems of sport, not just the talent. So that's why in my work, I'm advocating and researching about more human, child-centered approach to youth sports. To me, that's fundamental. Because right now what we have, particularly on major sports, is very talent focused, performance centered approach. We need to completely flip that. We need a paradigm shift there. It needs to be more around human, child-centered. So the system needs to develop the human, not the performer. And those good ones, they will get there anyway. But what is important, the system treats everyone and nurture everyone in the grassroots and youth system, so that we know once the majority leaves the sport ecosystem, they are complete human beings. They are not missing out of online. So there is quite a lot there, but that's my wider research around safeguarding and protection of young talent. And I think we need to have that ecosystem that I just described.
Thank you very much. I think we're running out of time. We apologize if we did not ask the questions. We're concluding this seminar. We just wanted to also express my gratitude to Dr. Mizna Al-Marzouqi, Director General of LDI, and Khalid Rashid, Director of Training, and his team for organizing this seminar. A special thank you to our phenomenal experts speaker, Dr. Sarhat. Your valuable insights and extensive research have provided us the deeper understanding of the commercial management for athletes. To our engaged audience, thank you for your active participation and your questions. Your enthusiasm and willingness to learn have enriched our discussion tonight and underscore the importance of continued dialogue in this field. Thank you once again for being part of this significant event. We look forward to seeing you have a positive impact of this seminar. Thank you, Dr. Sarhat, again, and thank you for everyone for attending this seminar. We appreciate your presence and your questions and engagements. And we look forward to see you hopefully in the future with upcoming seminars as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.